Hello everybody and welcome back to Start Crochet. In today's lesson we're going to learn how to work a basic granny square in one color. Okay, we're not going to be changing any colors for now. Most times granny squares do have different colors for each round, but for a start let's not get into changing colors. We're just going to work a basic granny square in one solid color. I prepared a little diagram for you here to explain what's going on because it might look a little bit confusing for a start, and I thought I'll explain it to you on this diagram before we get started. So the stitches you need to know to work a granny square are the chain stitch, the slip stitch, double crochet stitch. If you don't know how to work these three stitches, please go back and watch the tutorials I have on each of one of these stitches, okay? So basically, granny squares are worked in rounds, okay? So we create a little circle here first with 4 chains, okay? This little dot means a slip stitch. We work 4 chains, we connect them to form this little circle. And then this round here, round 1, is worked into this circle space. All right? So for round 1, we start off every round with a chain 3 to get to the height of the double crochet stitches that are going to come next to it. Okay, so for round 1, we start with a chain 3, round 2, chain 3, round 3, chain 3, and round 4, chain 3. So once we've got our yarn to the height that we want to create this cluster here, this is the equivalent of this cluster here, 1, 2, 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3. So this is the symbol for a double crochet stitch. So we've got one cluster, 1, 2, 3, okay? Then we want to create this gap here, which is this thing here, this little gap. And we do that by chaining 2 in a corner. You see granny squares have 4 corners, right? It's a square, so we've got 1 corner, 2, 3, 4. And you always have 4 corners in each round, okay? So we're going to work a corner with a chain 2, then work another cluster of 3 double crochets. This is what we call a cluster. When you do 3 double crochets together coming out of one space or stitch, this is what we call a cluster. Then we're going to work another corner, create 3 double crochet cluster, another corner, 3 double crochet cluster, and we could close off this square with another corner here and end with a slip stitch. A slip stitch is where we're going to connect the chain 2 to this beginning chain 3 that we started off with. So you're working in the round this way, you end with a slip stitch, then you go up to the next round like this with a chain 3. I should have put this a little bit closer here, but you get the picture. Chain 3 here, then you want to double crochet, and you're working into this space here. You work into the spaces. You don't work into the actual tops of the stitches like you normally would in other projects, okay? So that's the great thing about granny squares, is that you can just simply work into the spaces. You see these 3 double crochets here are wrapped into this space, okay? So into this space here, you're working a chain 3, double crochet, and a double crochet. So you have your first cluster. Now to move from this cluster to this cluster, you're going to chain 1 in between to create a gap here, which is this gap here, okay, for the next round to work into. Okay, so you created a gap with a chain 1, then you do a double crochet cluster, chain 2 for a corner, double crochet cluster, chain 1 to move from one to the next. So you chain 1 between double crochet clusters, but if you're in a corner, if you want to create a corner, you chain 2. All right, this is going to be much clearer when we actually work the project. I just wanted to start off by explaining that we're working in the rounds, and then we go up with a chain 3, working around, go up to the next round with a chain 3, and your square keeps getting bigger and bigger as you work the rounds, keeps expanding like this. And the important thing to note is whenever you get to a corner, you want to chain 2, and also to create a corner, you're going to do a cluster, chain 2, and another cluster, all in the same corner space of the previous round. Anyway, enough talking and explaining. Let's get started with our project. So grab your yarn. I'm using a cotton yarn here, which I would actually not recommend for beginners. I'm using it because you see the stitches much better, I feel, than with acrylic yarn. I'll just show you quickly. This is acrylic yarn. You can start with acrylic. It's much easier to work with and more forgiving if your tension is not perfect yet. So here's a swatch that I started with acrylic yarn, and I just feel the stitches are not as clear as with cotton. So that's why I'm opting for cotton for this tutorial. But for you, I'd recommend acrylic yarn actually, because it's easier to work with, it's softer, and it's more forgiving, and you can adjust the stitches easier if your tension wasn't quite right. So to start off, I'm assuming you know how to work a chain, slip stitch, and double crochet for this project. So we start off with a slip knot. Attach the yarn to our hook like this, hold our yarn, wrap it around, and we're going to start with this section here, this chain 4, okay, to make a little circle. 1, 2, 3, and 4. We chained 4 here, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then in the first chain, not the slip knot, the first chain, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, and pull through the stitch that was on your hook, the loop that was on your hook, to create a little circle. So you created, you joined the front and the end of your chain 4 with a slip stitch. So now what we've done is we made a little circle that we can start working into all these stitches over here. Don't get confused now. You'll find a little gap up here where your yarn's coming out from. That's not where you want to work into it. You want to work into this gap right here. Okay, this one here. So now now we've actually done this bit here. Okay, we're going to do a chain 3 to start round 1. So let's do chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then we need to do 2 double crochet stitches into this circle. So yarn over, insert your hook into that gap in the middle of your circle, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2 to complete your double crochet stitch. That's your first double crochet stitch here. Now we want to do another one. Yarn over, go into that center hole of the first circle you created, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. So here we have the circle, okay, and we have 1, 2, 3 stitches. The first one is a chain 3, which counts as a double crochet, and then 2 double crochet stitches. All right, so we have our first cluster. This is what we call a cluster here. Okay, so now we're going to chain 2 to work this corner. Hold your yarn and chain 2. It's kind of funny, you know, when you first work the chain 2, you don't really realize that there's going to be a corner, but it will be. It will be a corner like this once you start working the round, and it will be much clearer also once you start the second round. So we've chained 2. Now we want to do another cluster of 3 double crochets into that same gap in the center of the circle. So we're going to yarn over, here's the center of our circle, go in there, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 loops and another 2 loops. We'll go into the circle again. Second double crochet into the circle again. Third double crochet. All right, so now what we've done, let's have a look here. We have our circle, this one. We have these 3 stitches, choose these. We've done our chain 2, this one, and now we've just done these 3 stitches over here, okay? So now we want to do another chain 2 for the corner, and then another cluster of 3 double crochets. So we're working around, so basically we're like turning like that as we're working. So we're going to work the chain 2 for the corner. Get some more yarn here. And we want to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and the third one. Okay, so now we have 1 corner, 2 corners. We want the third corner, so we do a chain 2, yarn over, back into that center hole with 3 double crochet stitches. 1, oops, 2, and 3. Oh, I messed that one up. Let's do it again. 3. All right, so now we have 1 corner, 2 corner, 3, and for the 4th corner, we're still going to chain 2 as we always do, and we want to connect, we want to join to that first chain 3, to the top of the first chain 3 that we started with in this round. So it's going to be a little bit tight, especially with cotton yarn, but you found the stitch. Yarn over, pull through, and join with a slip stitch. Right, so now we have round 1 completed. All right, we have these 4 corner spaces. Okay, right here is 1, 2, 3, 4. And if your project doesn't really look like a square, don't worry, just stick your fingers in these holes, pull them apart like this, and it will look more like a square as you get working. Okay, so we've completed round 1. Now we want to go up to round 2. So what we're going to do is go up with a chain 3 and then continue this cluster by adding 2 double crochet stitches. Let's do that. Okay, so chain 1, 2, and 3. Yarn over. Now you might wonder where exactly to place the next stitch. There's several ways of doing this. I prefer to go back into this little gap here. Other designers might tell you to work into this one here so that, you know, after you go around, you add another 2 here. But I like starting off with this gap, and I add my 2 double crochets to make a cluster right here first. Okay, so yarn over, go backwards into that gap, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2 to complete your first double crochet stitch, and another one into that same gap. This yarn frays a little bit, so I wouldn't recommend it for beginners. Try to find a yarn that doesn't fray so much. So now we want to move from this gap to this gap, and to do that we're only going to chain 1 right here. Okay, we're not at a corner here, we're just moving from this gap to this gap. So chain 1 and work a 3 double crochet cluster into this corner space. 1, 2 and 3. So what we need to note here is that once we get to a corner, we're going to create another corner for the next round, right? So chain 2, and then we're going to create another cluster into that same gap. So it's basically 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, all into this gap here to create the corner for the next round. So we're going back into the same gap, yarn over, pull through. Okay, so 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, and 3 double crochet. So you basically have 6 double crochets into this corner gap here, okay, with a chain 2 in between. So 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet. And now we're moving from this gap to this gap here. So we're only going to chain 1. And then we'll do the same for this gap. 3 double crochet, and then chain 2 and another 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3, chain 2 for the corner, go back into the same gap, 1, 2, and 3. All right. You see how we're coming along here? So we finished round 1, we're on round 2. We started off here, which is here. Okay, let me hold it the same direction. Number 2, got this one here, and we finished these 2 here. So we have these to go, okay? So of course, as you're working, we're turning our work, right? So we finished this corner, so we want to move over to this one, so we're only going to chain 1. And then in that corner gap, 3 double crochet, chain 2 for the corner space, and in the same space again, another 3 double crochet. Oops. There, we created another corner here. Now we want to move from this gap to this gap. We're going to chain 1, and if you look closely here, we already have in this gap a 3 double crochet. So what we're going to do is create the second one, the second 3 double crochet cluster for this gap, this corner gap. All right, so we have the 3 here that we just created. We're going to make a chain 2 and join it with a slip stitch to the top of this chain 3 here. So we're going to chain 2, find the top of the chain 3 here, and join it with a slip stitch. There we go. All right, so now we're done with round 2. If it looks a little wonky, don't worry, just pull these corners out a little bit with your fingers. There's a way to block granny squares. That's going to be another lesson that we'll learn later. Okay, but for now, just pull these corners out like this so that you can see the shape of your square coming along nicely. All right, so now we're done with round 2. We're just going to continue and do the same for round 3. The only difference will be is that the further up you go, the larger your square becomes. You join with 1 chain stitch, and of course every corner you work 2 chains to create the corner. So let's go here now for the beginning of round 3. We're going to chain 3 to start this cluster. We're going to work 2 double crochet into that same chain space by going slightly backwards. into that gap, the corner gap. Okay, so we have one cluster done already, chain one. Now we're doing this cluster into this gap here. 1, 2, and 3. Moving to the next gap, we're going to chain 1. And because we're in a corner gap now, we're going to work 2 clusters, which means 6 double crochet stitches with 2 chains in between the 2 clusters for the corner. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3. We're going to do the corner chain 2 and another 3 double crochets into that same space. All right, so I just created a corner with 2 clusters here. Chain 1 to move to the next space and do 3 double crochet in this one. Chain 1 to move to the next space. 3 double crochet in this one. Then we went to chain 2 for the corner and another 3 double crochet in the same space. So let's see how far along we are now. Okay, so we've done this side and this side. We're now moving on to third side. Go chain 1 to move to the next space. Let's do 3 double crochet in that space. Chain 1 to move to the next space here. And because this is a corner space, we're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 2, and another 3 double crochet all in the same space. We've done 3, chain 2, and another 3, 1, 2, 3. All right. And then we want to move from this space to this middle space here. So we're going to chain 1 only. Move over here to that middle space with 3 double crochets into that same space. And now we're getting back to that corner that we started with. So we have 1 cluster done. This one's done already. What we want to work is this one and then join it with a chain 2. Okay, so we're going to work into that corner space with 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, and we'll do a chain 2 for the corner, and we'll join to the top of that beginning chain 3 to close off this round. All right, so now we've done 3 rounds. Okay, so just pull these a little bit here so that it looks more like a square. You can stretch it as much as you want. I'm going to put it on here, so now this is a little bit smaller than the diagram. So what we've done is here, chain 3, 2 double crochet, chain 1, and you have the clusters, and in every corner you have a cluster, chain 2, a cluster. Okay, here you only have 1 cluster, 2 clusters in the corners. Okay, and you just keep going like that for however many rounds you want, depending on the size of the granny square that you want to make. And next time I'm going to show you how to change colors so that every round is a different color. And that's like the distinctive look of granny squares, is the colorful ones. Of course, this is the basic granny square. There's many different types of granny squares out there. But once you get the hang of this one, it'll be easier for you to experiment with other more advanced techniques. So I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you have any questions, please do leave them in the comments below. And if you liked this tutorial, I'd love it if you hit that like button. And I'll see you in our next lesson. All right, bye for now.